I came home from my work trip on a Thursday evening with sore feet, a carry-on bag, and nothing on my mind except a hot shower and my husband's voice. I had been gone for 4 days. I expected a quiet house, maybe leftovers warming on the stove. What I found instead stopped me at the front door. Trevor was standing in the middle of our living room. His jaw was tight. His eyes were red around the edges, the way they get when he has not slept. And sitting at our dining table, with her handbag on her lap and her back perfectly straight, was his mother, Constance. She looked at me the way a judge looks at someone already found guilty. Before I could set down my bag, Trevor slid a document across the table toward me. His hand was shaking slightly. "My mother found this," he said. I looked down. It was a birth certificate. A child named Daniel. A mother listed as a woman named Sola. And a father, Trevor Okafor. Our address. Trevor's ID number. Every detail precise and damning. Constance's voice was soft and satisfied. "She has been hiding a whole family from you." Trevor looked at me with broken eyes. "Is this real, Amaya?" My mouth opened. Nothing came out, because right there in black ink was something I had never seen before and had absolutely nothing to do with. "I need to take you back 3 years, to the first evening I met Constance." Trevor warned me gently on the drive over. "My mother is particular," he said, which I later understood was the kindest way to describe her. What he did not tell me was that Constance had already chosen someone else for her son. A woman named Adiz, the daughter of her oldest friend, from the same hometown, from the right family. I was none of those things. Constance opened the door that evening in a pressed blouse and a warm smile. She complimented my dress in one breath and asked Trevor, right in front of me, whether he had introduced me to Adiz yet. She offered me food with one hand and used the other to steer every conversation away from anything that included me. I told myself it was nerves. First meeting, high stakes. She just needed time. But I still remember the moment at our wedding when she pulled me into a hug and whispered in my ear, "Take care of my son." It did not feel like a blessing. It settled against my skin like a warning. I smiled anyway and told myself I was imagining things. That was my first mistake. For 2 full years, I tried everything. I learned Constance's recipes, the way she made her pepper soup, the exact amount of crayfish she added to her stew. I called her Mama C because she asked me to. I attended every naming ceremony, every birthday, every Sunday lunch she organized, even when work was difficult and the drive was long. She was always pleasant when Trevor was in the room. Warm smiles, gentle pats on the hand, compliments that sounded real if you were not paying close attention. But Trevor was often not in the room. And when he was not there, she was different. She told me my jollof rice was almost right. She asked when we were having children in the tone of someone noting a missed deadline. She mentioned Adiz at least once per visit, always casually, always with a small smile. I never told Trevor. He loved his mother deeply. She had raised him alone after his father died, and that history sat between them like something sacred. So I swallowed every comment, every cold glance, every mention of Adiz's name. One evening, I found an old journal entry I had written 8 months into the marriage. Something is wrong with this woman. I just cannot prove it yet. I should have trusted myself then. The distance started on a Tuesday. I did not notice it at first. Trevor was quieter at dinner, but he had a difficult project at his construction firm, and I assumed it was stress. He stopped asking about my workday. He went to bed earlier than usual. Small things I filed away without examining. Then one evening I was walking down our hallway and heard his voice coming through the slightly open bedroom door. Low and careful. "Mum, I told you I would handle it." A pause. "I said I would handle it." I stepped into the doorway. He looked up and ended the call immediately. His face shifted, not quite guilty but closed, like a door swinging shut right as you reach for it. "Who were you talking to?" "My mother." "Business stuff." He went to bed early that night and did not kiss me goodnight. I stood in the kitchen for a long time afterward, retracing the past 2 weeks in my head, looking for the exact moment things had shifted. When I found it, my stomach dropped. The distance had started the week Constance arrived for 10 days without any warning. After Constance left that Thursday evening, Trevor went upstairs without another word. I heard his footsteps above me, slow and heavy. I sat alone at the dining table. The birth certificate was still in front of me. I read it carefully this time, the way you read something that is trying to deceive you. The child was named Daniel. His date of birth was listed as 11 months before Trevor, and I had even met. The mother was named Sola, with a surname I did not recognize. The father was listed as Trevor Okafor, with his old apartment address, a place he had lived in before we started dating. His ID number printed cleanly below. Something was pulling at the edge of my thinking. If Sola had wanted Trevor to know about a child, why contact Constance? Why not contact Trevor directly? And how had Constance connected with a woman from Trevor's past, a woman I had never once heard him mention? I looked at the document for another long minute. Then I took out my phone and photographed every inch of it. Front, back, the margins, the registrar's stamp in the corner. Every detail I could capture before Trevor came back downstairs. Whatever this was, I was not going to face it without evidence of my own. Trevor came downstairs an hour later and sat across from me. He told me the truth, or the portion he knew. Before we met, he had been briefly involved with a woman named Sola. It lasted a few months and ended without drama. He had not spoken to her since. He had not told me because there was nothing to tell. It was long over, and she had never contacted him again. He swore he did not know about any child. I watched his face carefully as he spoke. I know this man. I know the small signs that appear when he is hiding something, the way his left eye tightens slightly, the way his hand moves to the back of his neck. He did none of those things. He was telling me what he genuinely believed. But there was one moment, one half-second pause. How did your mother get this document? I asked. He blinked. She said Sola contacted her. I kept my voice steady. Why would Sola contact your mother and not you? If she wanted you to know about a child, why go through Constance? Trevor opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer. And from the look on his face, it was the very first time he had thought to ask that question. I called my best friend Jade the following morning. Jade is a paralegal. She has a sharp, careful eye and no patience for dishonesty. I read her every detail from the document slowly and clearly over the phone. She was quiet for a moment. Then, send me the photo. I sent all 8 pictures. I waited. 30 minutes later, she called back. Amaya, this document has problems. She explained carefully. The font used for the registrar's official stamp did not match the standard format that particular office used during the year printed on the certificate. The certificate number was 1-digit sequence off from official government formats she had seen professionally. The spacing on the header was slightly inconsistent with printed government forms. I cannot say for certain it is forged without a forensic examination, she said. But it is not clean. Someone put this together carefully, but in a hurry. I pressed my back against the kitchen wall and closed my eyes. Who would do this? I asked, even though the answer was already forming somewhere in my chest. Jade's voice was steady and even. Whoever did it needed Trevor's personal details. His old address. His ID number. That information does not belong to a stranger. I found Sola through an old shared email account Trevor and I had set up in our first year of marriage for household bills. He had forwarded a work message once, and buried in that thread was a name I now recognized. I did not tell Trevor. I needed to reach her before anyone else could get ahead of it. I sent Sola a short, calm message. I introduced myself as Trevor's wife. I said I was not angry. I only wanted to understand what had truly happened. 24 hours passed. Then her reply arrived, one line, I have been waiting for someone to finally ask. We spoke on the phone that evening while Trevor was at a site meeting. Sola's voice was calm and clear. She confirmed she and Trevor had dated briefly. She confirmed it ended without bad feeling. She had not thought about it in years. Then she said the words that shifted everything. She had never been pregnant. There was no child named Daniel. She had never contacted Constance. Not once. Not for any reason. But Constance called me, Sola said. About 6 weeks ago. She asked questions about Trevor's past. I did not answer her. So, how is my name on a birth certificate I have never seen? The line went quiet between us. I sat with that silence and let it answer itself. I contacted the civil registry office the following morning. I had the certificate number from the document. I called the official line, explained I needed to verify a registered birth, and read the number out carefully. The officer on the other end typed for a moment. That number does not exist in our records. I asked her to check again.
She did.
No record of a child named Daniel Okafor. No mother registered under that name with that surname. No registration at that office matching any detail on the document. Are you certain? I asked. The number you've given me is not in this system. It has never been in this system. I thanked her and ended the call. I sat at the kitchen table and let it settle completely. For 3 days, I had felt like a woman defending herself against something she could not disprove. Now here was the actual truth. Simple, clean, and completely different from what Constance had placed on my dining table. The document was fabricated. Every stamp, every number, every detail, constructed by someone to look real enough to end a marriage. And that someone had needed Trevor's personal information to build it. Jade came over that Saturday morning. We sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of tea, and everything I had gathered spread between us. Together, we built the full picture. Constance had been working quietly to end our marriage for over a year. She had done it through small means, mentions of Adiz, subtle suggestions that I was not the right fit, comments dressed up as concern. But Trevor was happy and not listening. Every gentle push had failed. So she had changed her approach entirely. She had called Sola 6 weeks earlier, pulling her name from something Trevor had likely mentioned years before. Sola had not cooperated, but by then Constance had already collected enough. She had Trevor's old documents, papers from a box in his childhood bedroom, accessible during years of visits.
His old address.
His ID number. Enough to take to a print shop and construct something official-looking. Jade looked at me across the table when we finished. She did not find evidence, Jade said quietly. I looked down at everything laid out in front of me.
No, I said.
She built it. The words sat between us like stones placed carefully on a table. I gathered everything. Jade's written analysis, Sola's statement, the registry officer's confirmation, and sat Trevor down the following Sunday afternoon. I laid each piece out calmly, in order. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I let the facts do the work. Trevor listened with his hands folded on the table. His face moved through several things as I spoke. Disbelief, then quiet anger, then something harder to name. When I finished, he picked up his phone and called Constance directly.
Mum.
I need you to explain exactly where you got that document. Her voice came through clearly enough for me to catch parts of it. She was calm, completely unbothered. She said she had received the certificate from a contact who knew Sola. She stood by everything. When he hung up, Trevor looked torn. He said he believed me but needed to speak to her in person, alone. I watched him pick up his keys. I watched him walk to the front door. I stood at the window as his car pulled from the driveway. And I felt the particular, heavy dread of a woman who knows the truth is entirely on her side, but is not certain it will survive the next 2 hours inside someone else's house. Trevor returned 2 hours later. He sat on the edge of the sofa and looked at the floor before he spoke. Constance had cried. She told him I had kept her at a distance since the beginning of our marriage, that she had tried again and again to build something real with me, and I had always been cold. That she had only brought him the document because her love for him was too strong to allow her to stay silent. Then she planted one final seed before he left. Why is Amaya so calm about all of this? She had asked quietly. Wouldn't an innocent woman be far more upset? Trevor told me he still believed me, but the distance returned. That quiet, cold space that had first appeared the week of her unannounced visit. He finished his dinner in silence and went to bed. I sat at the table alone. Constance was clever. She understood that pushing Trevor directly had not worked. So she had switched to something more dangerous, making him question his own ability to judge clearly, making his trust in me feel like a flaw rather than a foundation. I understood then that facts alone were not enough. I needed to find where the lie had actually started. I went back to the document. Not to read it. I had every line memorized. I looked at it the way you examine something made by human hands, searching for the mistake its maker did not realize they had left behind. I zoomed into the photograph on my phone and moved slowly across each section. The registrar's stamp, the header, the date field, the bottom margin, and there, in the very bottom left corner, barely visible, a faint watermark. A small printed logo pressed into the paper. I screenshotted it and sent it to Jade. She called back in under 2 hours.
It is a print shop, she said.
A small one, in the town where Constance grew up. I looked it up immediately. The shop was real. It had a Facebook page showing business cards and event flyers, a working phone number, a street address. I opened the transport booking app on my phone and searched for the earliest bus the following morning. I told myself I was only going there to ask questions. But I already knew, the way you know rain is coming before the first drop falls, exactly what I would find when I arrived. The bus ride was 5 hours. I spent most of it looking out the window, rehearsing what I would say without frightening anyone into silence. The print shop was exactly where the map showed it, small, tucked between a pharmacy and a tailor on a quiet street. The kind of place that printed church flyers and restaurant menus. The young man at the counter recognized the watermark the moment I showed him the screenshot on my phone. He did not need to search for it. I explained carefully that I was looking into a forged document and that the watermark had led me to a shop. He pulled up his order records. He scrolled. He found the entry. He turned the screen toward me without a word. The order had been placed 6 weeks ago, paid for in cash. The printed description matched the document placed on my dining table exactly. And in the contact field, the number left for collection was a phone number I recognized without hesitation. It was the number Constance used every Sunday evening without fail to call her son. I photographed the screen. My hands were completely steady. I thanked the young man and walked back out into the afternoon sun. I did not take the bus straight home. On the edge of town lived Trevor's aunt, his late father's only sister. Her name was Auntie Ngozi. She and Constance had never been close. Constance found her too plain-spoken. Auntie Ngozi found Constance too calculating. But she had been quietly and genuinely kind to me from our very first meeting. I knocked on her door without calling ahead. She opened it, looked at my face, and stepped aside without asking any questions. I showed her everything: Jade's notes, Sola's statement, the registry confirmation, the print shop screen. Auntie Ngozi read through it carefully. When she finished, she set it down and folded her hands in her lap. "Constance has done this before," she said. She told me about a woman Trevor had dated 7 years ago. A steady, decent woman named Zara. Within 1 month of the relationship becoming serious, a damaging rumor had spread. Zara had disappeared from Trevor's life without explanation. He had never understood why. "Constance decides who belongs beside her son," Auntie Ngozi said. "Anyone she has not approved, she removes." She paused. Then she stood and walked to the back of the house. She returned with a sealed envelope. "I have been keeping this for 12 years, she said. "I always believed it would matter one day." The envelope contained a letter from Trevor's father. He had written it 2 years before he died, in steady, careful handwriting on 2 plain sheets of paper. It was addressed to Trevor. He had never sent it. He had given it instead to his sister Ngozi, perhaps knowing time was shorter than he hoped, perhaps not yet ready to say these things out loud. I read every word slowly. He described a pattern he had watched in Constance for many years. Her deep need to control who Trevor allowed close to him. Her willingness to use dishonesty when soft pressure failed. He wrote about a woman he had watched her quietly drive away from Trevor's life when Trevor was only 22, and how Trevor had never known what truly happened. He did not write about Constance with hatred. He described her the way a man describes something he understands but cannot fix, with sadness and precision. At the end he wrote, "I am telling you this because I love you, and because I will not always be here to say it." I sat in Auntie Ngozi's front room and read those final words twice. This letter was not only proof of what Constance had done to me, it was proof of who she had always been. and it had been waiting, sealed and patient, for exactly this moment. I came home that evening and said nothing about where I had been. I cooked dinner. I asked Trevor about his workday. I listened when he spoke. I was warm, present, and steady throughout. During the meal, I watched his eyes move across my face, searching for something he could not quite name. After we cleared the table, he asked quietly, "Did you go somewhere today?" "Yes." "Where?" I told him everything. Constance's hometown. The print shop. Auntie Ngozie's house. His jaw tightened. "Why did you not tell me you were going?" I looked at him directly. "Because the last time something came up, you drove to your mother alone and came back distant. I needed to find the truth without asking for your permission first." A silence sat between us. "What did you find?" he said finally. I went to my bag. I placed 4 things on the table in front of him, one at a time. The print shop screen photograph. Sola's written statement. The registry office confirmation. And last, his father's letter. I sat down and watched him read. He moved through each item carefully. When he reached his father's letter, he slowed completely. He read every line. Then he went back to the beginning and read it again. Trevor did not speak for a long time after he finished. The kitchen was quiet around us. Outside, a car moved slowly down the road. A neighbor's dog barked once and went still. Inside our house, there was only the low hum of the refrigerator. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, quieter, hollowed out in the center, as though something had been carefully removed from it. She fabricated the whole thing. It was not a question. I said nothing. He picked up his father's letter and read it a 3rd time. His eyes moved slowly and deliberately across the page. When he set it down, his hands were still. He knew, Trevor said. My father knew exactly who she was. He did not cry, but his face did something harder to watch than tears, the expression of a man who has just understood that 2 things he loved completely were not the same thing. His mother and his idea of his mother. He reached for his phone. I placed my hand over his. Not yet, I said. If you call her now, she will cry and redirect everything. We need to go into this knowing exactly what we will say. He looked at my hand on his. Then he nodded. Then we plan, he said. We sat at the kitchen table until nearly midnight. We talked through everything carefully and without rushing. We agreed on one thing first. No loud confrontation, no public scene. Constance had already shown she could cry convincingly and reshape any conversation to her advantage. We needed one moment, controlled and quiet, with the right people present, where she could not redirect. Trevor suggested a Sunday lunch at our house, a normal family meal. We would invite Auntie Ngozi. We would present everything calmly and in order, before Constance had any chance to build a counterstory. We talked about what we actually wanted from it. Not revenge, clarity. We wanted Constance to understand that we both knew the complete truth, and that no version of events existed where she emerged looking like a concerned mother. We made a careful list of what to present and in what order. Near the end, Trevor said something quietly that I have carried close since that night. Whatever she says on Sunday, I already know what the truth is. I just need her to hear that I know it too. I looked at him across the table. 3 years of marriage, 2 years of quiet pressure, 4 of the hardest days of my life, and he was sitting here steady, choosing clearly. I reached across and held his hand. Constance arrived on Sunday at exactly 1 o'clock. She wore a blue blouse and carried a covered pot of jollof rice, Trevor's childhood favorite. She hugged him warmly at the door. She greeted me with a smile that landed just slightly above my eyes. She did not see Auntie Ngozie's car parked on the street until she was already inside and had set the pot on our kitchen counter. When she stepped into the dining room and found Ngozi already seated at the table, her smile tightened by the smallest possible degree. Her eyes moved from Ngozi to me, then to Trevor. Ngozi, she said, with the particular pleasantness people use for those they genuinely do not like. Constance, Auntie Ngozi replied warmly. We ate lunch. The conversation was careful and surface level. Constance was charming throughout, funny, attentive, asking Trevor about work, asking me about my last trip. She did not put a single foot wrong. I watched her perform from across the table, and I noticed something I had not expected to feel. No fear. Not even a trace of it. She was practiced and confident and fully in control of the room she believed she was managing. She had no idea what was sitting in the folder on our kitchen counter, waiting. After the plates were cleared, Trevor placed the folder in the center of the table. He did not raise his voice. He sat down, opened the folder, and laid out each item one at a time, naming each piece as he placed it. The print shop record showing the order date and contact number. Sola's written statement confirming she had never been pregnant and never contacted Constance. The civil registry confirmation that the certificate number had never existed in any official record. And last, placed face down, his father's letter. He described each piece in the same steady tone he uses when walking through a construction plan.
Clear.
Measured. Factual. Constance's expression moved through several stages. First confusion, then indignation. She straightened and began saying this was a misunderstanding. Then, briefly, something cold crossed her face before she arrived, as expected, at tears. "I was trying to protect you," she said to Trevor, her voice breaking. "Everything I did because I love you." Trevor looked at her for a long, unhurried moment. "You built a lie to destroy my wife," he said quietly. "And you called it love." Auntie Ngozi reached across and turned over his father's letter, sliding it toward Constance. Constance looked down. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Every bit of color left her face. Constance read the letter. Nobody spoke while she read. I watched her eyes move across the page. I watched her reach the end, pause, and sit completely still. She set it down carefully, the way you set something down when deciding what your next move should be. Then she began to explain herself. But the explanation kept changing shape. First it was concern for Trevor's future. Then it was the family's reputation. Then it shifted toward me. She said I had always kept her at arm's length, that she had tried for years to be close to me, and I had never allowed it. Trevor stopped her mid-sentence. "Which one is the true reason, Mum?" She looked at him. She opened her mouth. She closed it. Auntie Ngozi spoke for the first time since lunch had ended. Her voice was completely even. "This is exactly what you did to Zara as well." The name dropped into the room like something solid and heavy. Constance turned toward her slowly. The warmth she had carried through the entire afternoon was gone. What replaced it was something older and harder. The look of a woman who has just lost an advantage she did not realize she had already lost. Trevor looked at his mother calmly. "Sit down, Mum," he said, as she began to push back her chair. The room held its silence for a moment. Then Trevor asked the question I could see had been sitting behind his eyes since he first read his father's letter. "Did you do something to end things between me and Zara?"
Constance said nothing. "Mum."
Her silence answered more clearly than words would have. Trevor pressed, his voice never rising. And slowly, in pieces, it came out. She admitted it. She had told Zara that Trevor had grown serious with someone else and had moved on. Zara had believed her completely. Zara had stopped calling, stopped responding to his messages, disappeared from his life without explanation. And Trevor had spent a full year not understanding why a woman he truly cared for had simply gone silent. Constance said she had done it because Zara was not right for him, that she had only ever wanted what was best. Trevor was quiet for a long time after she finished. "You took a year of my life," he said, "and I never knew." He picked up his father's letter and held it without reading it again. Just held it. "He wrote this to warn me," Trevor said. "And you never gave it to me." She had nothing to say to that. There was nothing left that would not make everything worse. The room had gone very still. Then I asked the question I had been saving from the beginning. The one sitting quietly at the back of everything since the night I first photographed that birth certificate. The document had Trevor's name on it, I said. His old address. His ID number. A stranger could not have known those details. Someone needed access to Trevor's personal documents to build that certificate. "Where did you get that information?" Constance went completely still. I kept my voice level. "You needed his old lease agreement. His ID copy. Those were never public records." Her eyes moved briefly to Trevor, then back to the table. Trevor leaned forward slightly.
Mum.
Answer her. She looked at her hands. And then, in a low voice, she admitted it. Years ago, during one of her visits, she had gone through a box of Trevor's old documents in his childhood bedroom, a box she had packed when he first left home. She had taken copies of certain papers without telling him. She said at the time she did it, so she would have them in case he ever needed them urgently. She had been holding them, without his knowledge, for years. I let those words settle in the room before I spoke. You have been preparing for this for years, I said. Not as an accusation. As a plain fact. Trevor stood up slowly and looked at his mother. I need you to leave, he said. Please. Constance left. She picked up her handbag, walked past the pot of jollof rice on our kitchen counter, and did not look at me as she passed. At the front door, she looked at Trevor once, and he held her gaze without moving. Then she walked to her car and drove away. Auntie Ngozi stayed for tea. The three of us sat around the table, and no one rushed to fill the quiet. It was the kind of silence that does not need to be fixed, the kind that settles after something long and heavy has finally been set down. Eventually, Trevor walked to the kitchen window and stood looking out at the yard. When he turned around, his face was tired but settled. I am sorry, he said to me. I should have asked more questions from the beginning. I looked at him. You asked them when it mattered. We gave Constance 1 month of complete silence. No calls, no visits. At the end of that month, Trevor wrote her a letter, not cruel and not warm, but precise. He told her what she had done, what it had cost both of us, and what the boundary was going forward. He showed it to me first. I told him it was right. He sent it. 3 weeks later, Auntie Ngozi stopped by with groundnut soup and a small green plant for the windowsill. As she was leaving, she paused at the top of the porch steps and turned back. Trevor's father was a patient man, she said. He loved his son in the quietest, most lasting way. A pause. He would have liked you very much. I believed her without hesitation. Some people call control love because it is the only version they have ever known. But love does not forge documents. Love does not build cases in the dark. Love does not need a verdict to feel real. It simply shows up, tells the truth, and stays.